The DOJ is considering bringing sedition and conspiracy charges against those who stormed the U.S. Capitol. And there's a report that a man left a voicemail with a very explicit threat about what they're going to do on the 20th. And these stories I'm hearing are getting really terrifying. I mean, this voicemail was nuts. I can't even get close to repeating what this person said. Suffice it to say, I believe they were arrested. We're now hearing, just earlier today, Now This reports, several GOP reps physically pushed past Capitol Police and walked around the metal detector, refusing to be inspected, including Rep. Lauren Boebert, who has bragged about carrying a gun to Capitol Hill. Now, we have this story from yesterday. Boebert clashes with Capitol Police after setting off metal detectors. They set up metal detectors outside the chamber, and they're screening people for weapons. Why? Are they concerned that sitting members of Congress will take action against their political counterparts? And who is in charge of this? What is going on? The worst possible message that could be sent right now. The metal detectors would have done nothing during the storming of the Capitol. But it would seem that the real fear is each other. We've already heard from several progressive members of Congress that they didn't want to go to the secure chamber because they were worried about being in the same place as the Q conspiracy far-right politicians. I don't know what you want to call what's happening, because, you know, the left seems to get real mad when I say civil war. But have you seen the photos of the National Guard occupying the Capitol building? Sleeping in it. I don't want to say occupy, but, you know, sleeping in it, standing guard. And then people are showing drawings from this first Civil War of something comparable. They said for a long time, there's no civil war. It's never going to happen. I was wrong when I was saying years ago that the tensions and the escalation would not stop. And it was for obvious reasons. And a lot of my opinion was just coming from reading mainstream news. It's not like I just, you know, for the most part, you guys know what I do. Then we saw Trump supporters storm the Capitol building. Okay, now you can say, oh, yeah, but it was just one riot. I don't know, man. They set up metal detectors. Conservatives are refusing to use them. And Democrats are terrified that, I guess, armed right-wing politicians will do something. I'm not going to pretend to know what could happen, because I'll tell you this. You know, I said on the day of, on the 6th, that nothing was going to happen. I thought Trump supporters were going to wave their little American flags and then leave. And I was wrong about it. I don't know what's going to happen. And maybe security is the right call. Lauren Boebert got into a standoff, and now many on the left are demanding she be arrested. I want to tell you what happened here and go over what's going on now with Trump's approval rating. But the main point of this is not just about Lauren Boebert. I actually think she's kind of all right. She seems cool. But the left really, really despises her. We have a Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. She's in the Capitol. It was just stormed by people. Why can't she carry a weapon? You can see the split in ideologies here. The left says no guns. The right says Constitution says yes guns. And a refusal of either side to back down. The left is saying, please televise the arrest of Lauren Boebert, who bypassed and refused to listen to Capitol Police. Oh, they did nothing. They blocked her, and then she ignored them. What could they do? This is crazy. Could you imagine what would happen if they arrested her? It would be insane. But can you imagine the alternative? The left screaming and in outrage over her probably bringing a gun with her into the chambers. The Constitution is clear about the right to bear arms. Let's read this story first from CPR.org. They say Boebert clashes with Capitol Police after setting off metal detectors. Republican Rep. Lauren Boebert continued to make news at the Capitol on Tuesday, this time for refusing to let Capitol Police look through her purse after she set off metal detectors placed at entrances to the House floor. The metal detectors were set up after multiple Democrats reportedly expressed concerns about the freshman members insistent on carrying weapons. Boebert, a strong gun rights advocate and co-chair of the Second Amendment caucus, who has pledged to carry a gun in Congress, tweeted, "Metal detectors outside of the House would not have stopped the violence we saw last week. It's just another political stunt by Pelosi." She added that she is allowed to carry her weapons in Washington, D.C. and the Capitol complex. A memo from Acting House Sergeant at Arms Timothy Blodgett, explaining the new security measure, also reminded members that they are only allowed to have guns in their personal offices. Several Republican members expressed their frustration with the new security arrangement. Rep. Steve Stivers from Ohio told Capitol Police that he believed the metal detectors are unconstitutional. Others tried to go around them. Boebert has been facing calls of resignation or expulsion over her tweets on January 6th, discussing her whereabouts in the movements of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi while Trump supporters violently stormed the Capitol building. I'm here to work for the American people, so resignation is not on my mind, Boebert said. When asked if she regretted her tweets, Boebert was silent and headed to the House chamber and her run-in with the Capitol Police over the metal detectors. This is a story from the other day. A Colorado Republican tweeted about Pelosi's location during the Capitol siege. She's now facing calls to resign. There's nothing here. There's nothing here. This story is just an example of both sides' demand for power. Now, I know I'm already going to get the left and the right saying both sides. I'm not saying it's equal. The left's demand for power and compliance is insane. And the right, it's more about their individual liberties. To put it simply, no matter what happens, Lauren Boebert and people on the right will say the Constitution says to A, I will carry my weapon. And the left will say submit or else. Take a look at this. This is what Lauren Boebert tweeted. We were locked in the House chambers. The speaker has been removed from the chambers. And they said she tweeted her location. When I heard that, I was kind of like, whoa, no way. Did she tweet the speaker is now being holed up in the East Wing, built, door number 203 office? No, she said the speaker was removed. So did other people. Other people were tweeting about Mike Pence being removed, journalists, while this storming of the Capitol was happening. Nobody cared. You see how the balance of power is set up? It is obvious to everyone. The double standard is just law. I am sick of talking about it. There's no more need to say, look, there's a double standard. We know. Mike Pence ushered out of the chamber. Chuck Grassley ushered out of the chamber. Several tweets from journalists that he's being removed. They were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Where are the calls for the resignations or the terminations of anybody who was tweeting about the location of Mike Pence? None. But Lauren Boebert, that's right. They say Colorado Rep. Lauren Boebert was on the offensive Monday night, with the Republican issuing a bellicose statement amid growing calls for her resignation. Boebert accused Democrats of having their hypocrisy on full display with talks of impeachment, censure, and other ways to punish Republicans for false accusations of inciting the type of violence they have so frequently and transparently supported in the past. During the violent siege, Boebert first tweeted that representatives were locked in the House chambers, and then only a minute later that the speaker had been removed from the chambers. She dismissed the seriousness of the charges that she had endangered the life of Pelosi in her statement, or that her tweeting was even noteworthy in the first place. She said, Democrats accuse me of live tweeting the speaker's presence after she had been safely removed from the Capitol, as if I was revealing some big secret, when in fact this removal was also being broadcast on TV. The remainder of her statement was replete with baseless claims about Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the far left. Oh, but they're not going to tell us what she said. We get it. The media is on the side of the Democrats. It's been that way for quite some time, perhaps always. It's Republicans' fault. I don't care for the Republican Party. There's a difference between the right populists and the establishment and the left populists, but the left populists are more than happy to jump on the backs of the establishment and laugh because they think it'll lead them into some kind of position of power. But in the end, all that will really happen is that the right, knowing the media is full of it, there's a double standard, 75 million people, they're not going to back down. They're not going to just one day start believing the media. Now, OcasioCortez says that there's a commission being set up or something to that effect. She says commission being discussed to help rein in media environment after Capitol riot. You can't just spew disinformation and misinformation, Ocasio-Cortez says. This is the most nightmarish and frustrating thing about all of it. Anybody who actively reads the news knows that AOC is wrong or intentionally lying, one of the two, that it's the mainstream media intentionally putting out fake news. And while there are fringe, lunatic, conspiracy right-wing websites, for the most part, the mainstream media is putting out lies and garbage all the time. Look at the framing of things. It's not just about lies. It's also about framing. This is something that the left had been talking about since back in the Occupy days, that what you choose to cover also has an impact. And that's true. They realized this, so they took over the media. They got their activists involved. And now they can choose to only cover things that make the right look bad. Like Lauren Boebert revealed the location of Nancy Pelosi. Completely false framing, completely in bad faith, just not true. Not a true statement. She didn't reveal the location. She revealed one of the not locations, I guess. So what does this all bring us to? When I heard that Lauren Boebert was refusing to go through the metal detectors and it went off and she would not allow the police to search her, I thought about what would happen if, as the left calls for her arrest, what would happen if the police actually arrested Republican sitting Congresswoman? You realize we're in Civil War territory. Like, it's here. It's happening. It's not so overt like the height of Civil War. But I often say you need to understand that when you read history, it's condensed. Condensed history is, you'll read a paragraph and it'll say, 1850 this happened. And then in 1851 this happened. And realize there's a whole year in between some of these moments. Like the Revolution, the American Revolution lasted something like 20 years. That's like a generation. And that's crazy. It wasn't just the signing of the Declaration of Independence. A lot of the things that led to the American Revolution were happening for a long period of time. Now, I'll warn all of you, the last thing you want for this is escalation, but I don't think it can be stopped. Case in point, what's going on with Lauren Boebert. You think she's ever going to back down and let you take her gun away? No. She is literally the woman who challenged Beto O'Rourke saying, no, you can't take my guns. She runs a gun-themed restaurant in, I think it's Rifle, Colorado. You want to talk about strong morals or integrity or principles, it's definitely coming from her and her demand that she have the right to bear arms. Do you think the Democrats are going to sit back and just let her do this? Probably not. I really don't think so. So it comes down to eventually the police. Listen, Matt Taibbi wrote about this, the counting heads phase. What's happening is not exactly as everyone predicted or different people predicted. So it's, of course, going to be a little bit different. But what happens when Boebert is standing there and Pelosi is standing there and the cops get called and both Boebert and Pelosi point at each other and say, arrest this woman? And the cop has to go, what am I going to do? Maybe it'll never happen. But the reason I say Civil War territory is that we just had Trump supporters storm into the Capitol building. I don't know what else you want to call this, man. Two factions fighting over control of one government. And it's because we are seeing hyperpolarization and we are seeing increasing centralization of the government, but a country that is much too large. It's interesting. I was talking with a libertarian comedian, Dave Smith, the other night on the IRL podcast. Check it out, youtube.com/TimCastIRL. And he was mentioning that this country has always had many different cultures. Like New York is not the same as Alabama. And it's true. And what worked with this, to have a country of all these different cultures, multiculturalism, what worked was a weak centralized government, strong enough, but not too strong. That way, the people in West Virginia, for instance, are like, I can have my guns and do what I want, and y'all in New York can do what you want. And then everyone kind of was okay with the overarching federal authority so long as it was limited in scope. But it's becoming increasingly more prominent and powerful in the past several decades, to the point now where Joe Biden wants to ban guns for people who live in Wyoming, which makes no sense. It doesn't. You live in Wyoming, you got bears and wild animals. You need guns to protect yourself. You live in New York City, ain't got no bears. I get it. It makes sense. But the left doesn't know anything about guns. I mean, I'm only barely learning, and I'm a recent gun owner. And I know now how much I really did not know a couple of years ago when I was more in favor of a lot of these gun control laws. But one thing is certain. It makes no sense for Joe Biden to become president and then using the House, the Senate, and, effectively the legislature and the executive branch to pass a law that will restrict the rights of people who live in Wyoming and West Virginia. It's not the same. It's not the same. If you need to get a gun because you got animals, you got bears, you need to hunt, then you need to have access and the right to bear arms. More importantly, though, the Second Amendment is clear. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. But I think by any good faith assessment, it is being infringed, as is the right to assemble, as is the right to free speech. And there it is. So The leftists don't like when I talk about what's happening. They don't. They get really mad. They say, Tim, this is your fault for telling people what was going on. As if these people weren't already reading this stuff, and as if the actions they were taking wasn't resulting in my reading it. The point is, I'm not just saying this because it's not happened yet and it might. I'm saying that things literally happened, and I said, look at this thing happening. Sounds like civil war. And then, look, people already did it. People already stormed the Capitol when I talk about this stuff. People were already fighting in the streets when I mentioned this in the first place. And it was reaching the level of police, the mass rioting. Let me show you something. Let me show you President Trump job approval. Quinnipiac has Trump's approval rating at 33% from between the 7th and the 10th. Rasmussen from the 6th to the 10th has Trump at 48%. NPR PBS Marist on the 7th has Trump at 39%. Now, we can see in aggregate, Trump's approval rating has dropped quite a bit. The aggregate is currently at 41.6. Now, I'm not a big fan because it does include the 4th and the 5th and the 3rd. These other polls that have Trump at 40, 43, and even 50 are from well before the storming of the Capitol. So let's make one thing very clear. Rasmussen was the most accurate poll, one of, if not the most accurate poll in 2016 in terms of Trump's support. They're now saying that the days following the storming of the Capitol, Trump is enjoying very high approval. But think about Quinnipiac and even NPR. 39% the day after the storming of the Capitol. 39%. 39%. Interesting. Think about Quinnipiac. Even in the following days, 33%. A large portion of this country is okay with what Trump was saying and what he was doing. Now, I got to be honest. Maybe it's just because Trump is Trump and we should recognize that for what it is. You know, in that leaked phone call, Trump was just like, we had a great crowd size. It was the biggest ever. There's no way we lost. And he really was just being Trump. While Trump was speaking in D.C., groups had already started storming the barricades. So Trump had no way of knowing because he was in the process of speaking. He told everyone to peacefully march to the Capitol to cheer on politicians. I don't think anybody was feeding him information while he was on stage. However, afterwards, he tweeted about Mike Pence failing. And they're saying that's incitement. I think that's a dangerous thing to assert, but it was irresponsible nonetheless. Trump should have said, back away from the Capitol, stop this immediately, because all that really happened was bad for the Trump supporters. Doesn't matter, though. What people need to understand is it's not about what you think is right and what you think is wrong. My perspective is and always will be, for the most part, as tribeless. I don't care for anyone's tribe. I'm not going to blindly defend Trump. I will defend Trump when I think Trump has done well, and notably with the Abraham Accords, no new wars and things like that, and criticize him on his other foreign policy failures. And I'll criticize him on his character, as I always have. But I think when you see the left will not tolerate any defense of the man, they'll accuse anybody of who defends him, and even justifiably, of being right-wing or lying. And you can see this is where the lines have been drawn. There's no backing down for anybody. So again, it doesn't matter whether you support the president, doesn't matter who you support or not. What matters is, for those of you that are paying attention, we need calm, we need peace, but we got some angry people who just don't care. AOC won't back down. Some of the Republican politicians have tried to back down. Right now, they're, going through the process of voting for impeachment. And Republicans are basically begging them. Even some former Democrats are like, don't do this. You're not going to impeach Trump in time. All you're doing is pouring lighter fluid on a fire. Just stop. Trump can't do anything. You can't impeach him in time. You can't impeach and convict him in time to stop him anyway. They're not going to have a trial in time to prevent Trump from doing anything. All they're trying to do is escalate, to pour more fluid on the fire. Just stop. Everyone. I think most people, and I think most of the people who watch me, regular people, moderate individuals, like, center right, center left a little bit. The real, I don't want to say silent majority, but I really can tell a lot of the people who watch my content, not so much the people who comment. People who comment are really mad and kind of get mad at me all the times. all the time. But I think most regular people are ready for the chaos to be over and could do for some rest and relaxation and, letting the pot simmer down a little bit because it's about to boil over. But there are people who want more. This is not a direct criticism of Lauren Boebert. It is just a point being made that you can agree with her. And I think Lauren Boebert's, I like Lauren Boebert. I think she's principled and she stands up for what she believes in. I respect that. I don't believe the same thing for AOC at all. I think she is just a rage bait grifter trying to generate press for herself. I think she's trying to be a celebrity career politician and she's willing to destroy everything around her to get what she wants. That's why she voted for Nancy Pelosi. The last thing any progressive insurgent should have done. Republicans have no problem standing up to party leadership and defending the candidates they do like. Democrats walk in lockstep behind the establishment, even the progressives. This is the point I'm trying to make here is the Democrats are making demands of Republicans and Republicans are refusing to comply. This is in the congressional chamber right now. Why would it stop? Give me a real reason, because I just don't see it. This is another escalation. And what happens when you knock over a domino? You can see them all start falling over. This is why the way I explain it. It feels like we can see all of the dominoes stacked up and someone flicked one a long time ago. And since then, it's been going tick, 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 tick. If you look down the line, you can see the dominoes that are next to fall. It's just simple math. It's just common sense. When that domino falls, the next one is this. Unless someone puts something in to stop the domino from falling over and knocking over the next, it's just going to fall over. They put up metal detectors. Republicans refused to use them. Lauren Boebert walked through setting it off and then refused to stop, and the police could not stop her. Eventually, the police might, and they may pass a resolution and bar her from Congress. What do you think the people of her district will do? What's going to happen if they do expel Republicans? What happens to these states that aren't getting representation anymore? What happens to Texas when the AG said our representation is being put at risk by these states that are refusing to abide by the electors clause of the Constitution? The path we're on is a dangerous and dark one. We'll see. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. It's a different channel from this one. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.